Always. All right, the camera is pointing down up instead of straight.
1 second. The camera's pointing
at an angle. We're looking at you from below to up instead of straight like this.
I think this is
better.
Better, right?
Beautiful.
Yeah, I don't know. This is the 1 second. Let me just move this back now. Shouldn't get in the way of the other camera. Are we on YouTube? I think so, yeah.
Let me go there.
Go check. I think we are. No, we're on YouTube, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. He is packed. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Peah, Pei Gimel, Halacha Vav, and Halacha Zayin. We're going to learn today Daf Lamed Aleph, beginning on Daf Lamed Aleph, on top of the Amid, starting with the new Mishnah Vav. We're going to start a new topic, and that will be how much land must you have from which produce is growing. What's the minimum size of the field that will be chayiv for the owner to leave peah when he's harvesting whatever is growing there, as long as it meets the 5 prerequisites that we had on Daf Yud Beis. So in Mishnah Vav, we're going to have 4 opinions, machlokes, between 4 Tanoim. The Gemara is going to clarify, is going to give sources to the 4 opinions. And then in Mishnah Zayin, also on Daf Lamed Aleph, we're going to have 1 opinion, the 5th opinion, which is also the halacha, which is the shita of Rabbi Akiva. He holds that any minimum, doesn't matter how little, the most minute size of land that you owned will be mechayev you in the peah obligation. And once we speak about karka kol shehu, from there we're going to go into many other halachas that will apply to karka, and there also even a karka kol shehu is going to be, let's say, legally significant. Just as an example, there is a concept that when a shchiv merah gives a gift, and we'll speak more about it when we learn the daf. So as long as we know that he's giving it because he's getting ready for his death, you have 2 unique dinim. On one hand, he doesn't even have to make a kinyan. Also, that if he does not die at the end, that which would have gone into effect automatically is undone, because he only gave it because he thinks he's going to die. If a shchiv merah holds for himself, keeps for himself, retains for himself, even only karka kol shehu, that will give us the presumption that he did not give a gift because he was thinking of dying, because he was assuming he was dying. If that would have been the case, he would not have kept or retained for himself anything. The fact that he retained even only karka kol shehu, so now the presumption is that what he gave was not in the category of amat shchiv merah. More details, just one other example, that a woman who's married has her ksuba automatically liened to everything the husband owns. If he gives a gift, if he gifts away all of his belongings, let's speak about all of his property. I'll add the words all of his belongings when we learn the sugya, just quoting Takanas HaGo'ainim, but let's speak about dafka property. So the person who receives those gifts will have those properties encumbered to, liened to the debt, if she'll one day actually collect the ksuba. However, if this husband, while he's gifting everything away, if the husband in that gift also gives his wife land, even if the land is kol shehu, even if the land doesn't equal the value of the ksuba, the fact that he gave a gift to everyone and he gave in that gift some piece of land to her, we presume that she waived the lien on the rest of the gifted property. Another din of karka kol shehu, and we will be learning many other halachas. We're going to actually have a braisa that applies the halach of karshahu to other cases where the Mishnah does not even talk about. As for an example, did you know that the mitzvah of re'oyon that we actually mentioned in the beginning of this Masechta, right, that every male has to appear to see and to be seen in the Beis Hamikdash, right, 3 times a year, minimally during the 3 regalim, that only is binding, that's a chiyuv, only if that person owns land in Eretz Yisrael. The land could be karka kol shehu, but he has to own land. If a person is not a landowner, he's not obligated in the mitzvah of re'oyon. Another rule we have in Parshas Kisavei, the mitzvah called vidui maisres, and that is that Pesach on the 4th year and Pesach on the 7th year of the Shemitah cycle, after the person not only separated, gifted, gave away all of the Trumas Maisres, so the person makes a declaration. It's called vidui maisres, telling the Eibishter that they fulfill the mitzvah of maisres in its complete state. Vidui maisres is only said by someone who owns land. If you don't own land, you don't say that type of declaration, vidui. And here also, how much land must you owe? Karka kol shehu. So that will basically be the bulk of Daf Lamed Aleph in the bottom and Daf Lamed Aleph on base will all be about many halachas and where you have to have karka. But karka kol shehu suffices to meet this chiyuv of having karka. Okay, without any further ado, Chavra, we're starting today's Daf Lamed Aleph. Rabbi Shlomi, you came late, so now you were voted out with the machine. So the machine is facing another direction. Maybe if we'll come tomorrow before Kavan, we're going to flip the machine to the other direction. So Zak the Heilige Mishnah. Amachlekas over here, Amayroyim. What side? So the question is, what's the minimum size of a field? Is there a minimum? And as we'll see, yes, there were Machlekas Tanoim, on which we would say a leniency, that if it's smaller than the minimum, you don't have to leave payah from that land. Mishnah Vav has 4 shitas. Mishnah Zayin will have the 5th shitas Rabbi Akiva. Let's begin.
Wait, what's the minimum size? What's the minimum size you have to own in Israel when you go to be seen 3 times? What does that mean?
That means as long as we'll get there today. Karka Kolshu, there is no minimum size. By payah, and by the way, Kevin, just for those who got the intro, we got to Karka Kolshu only after we learned Rabbi Akiva's opinion, who says Karka Kolshu. Now the Mishnah Vav is not Karka Kolshu. And we're going from larger to smaller. The larger the land, the more of a leniency it is. The larger the land means that if it doesn't have that size, you don't have to leave payah. Rabbi Eliezer Oimer, Karka, it must have a minimum of Beis Roiva. Beis Roiva is a land which is necessary to plant 1/4 of a kav of seeds. This nuance is throughout Shas, but we're going to emphasize it more in Yerushalmi because we're learning a lot of Zeroyim. Like when we learn Sasayim, I'll speak it out in the Mishnah. Sometimes Chazal, they spoke about product, the size for the quantity of that product to grow. Roiva hakav is not the product, not the produce, not the grain, not the legumes. It's seeds, land in which you want to plant 1/4 of a kav. 1/4 of a kav is 6 eggs volume. Just to know that we say that 1 egg volume is around 50 grams. Okay? So karka beis roiva chayavas bepeya. What does that mean, guys? It's around 104 square amas. Now, this is the most lenient opinion because what Rabbi Eliezer is saying is that if the land is not around 104 square amas, even though you planted produce, you don't have to leave payah. I want you to know that there is a discussion amongst the Achroinim, even in these shitas of Mishnah Vav, whether they hold that this is true midoiraisa or only midrabanan. Many say it has to be on the doiraisa level because if the oibishter is mechayev to leave payam even on karka kolshehu, how can the chachamim take away the chiyuv? No, it's the chachamim. Normally they put a fence, they're more machmir. However, there are some who hold that it doesn't work that way. We already spoke this out when we began this Masechta, that nowadays, do you know that if you own land and you have a niyam near where you live, you don't leave payah? Why don't you leave payah? Because nowadays aniyim, they don't want grain. They need food. We don't know how to. We don't turn grain into flour. We don't do that. In other words, the Chachamim have the koyach to say specifically by payah, not just because yesh koyach b'yat Chachamim la'akadovim and atoyda b'sheiv al tassim. No, more than that. If aniyim, aniyim have to wait to get payah, and no one knows when the guy is leaving it, and then there is the pushing and the shoving and who's getting it. It has to be worth it. In other words, there is a logic to say that even if Rabbi Eliezer is midrabanan, what the Chachamim are basically saying, it's not worth it for an ani to go pick up payah if the field is smaller than this 104 and a bit square amas, because you know how little payah is going to be there? It's like the Mishulachim don't yet come here to Chabad Solo because there's only one shul here. Makes sense. You're going for the amount of money that people give, you want to have 5 shuls in a row. And we'll get there, God willing. Anyways, just to put it out there. But let's go back. So whether it's Doraisa or Rabbanan, Rabbi Eliezer is the most lenient, the largest base Roiv Akav. Next sheet is Rabbi Yoshua, Bo'oisa Sosayim. Bo'oisa Sosayim is not seeds. Bo'oisa means, no, the field that produces 2 sa'ah of produce. You got that? Less than that. That's smaller. It's more chamor chevron. It's a smaller sheet in Amos than Rabbi Eliezer. Rab Tarfon holds that it's 6 on 6 tfachim. That's even less than Rabbi Yeshua. And the final in this Mishnah, the 4th Tana in this Mishnah, is Rabbi Yeshua ben Beseira, and he holds, you know how little, even if it's only big enough, kedei litzar v'lishnois. If it's big enough that whatever is growing there, when the person will reap it, it's not so little that you grab it and you reap it in one go. Normally, you would grab a bundle. Now, when it comes to the bigger fields, you would actually be ma'almim alumim b'say chasada, like the cholam. You would actually bind it. If it's not that big, you wouldn't have to bind it with a rope, but you would grab it in one hand, grab a whatever, and then you would cut with the other hand with a sickle. And actually, as the Gemara points out, and we already learned, when are you chayiv to leave payah? Not when the produce is grown. What triggers the chiyuv? When you begin to harvest. When you begin to harvest, you have to harvest once, and then you have a mitzvah to leave the other. So that's the smaller share, l'chu'ura. You have enough that you grab one, and then you have another bundle that you could have harvested. There is enough for you to harvest, but now you're fulfilling the mitzvah to be maniach, shianiach pei. That's litzart v'lishnis. And now the Mishnah adds, v'halacha kidvarav. We actually learned a few daf ago a klal that in the Mishnah, even if in the Mishnah it says halacha kidvarav, it doesn't necessarily mean we follow that halacha. When we were learning the whole sugya of Torah Shaval Peh. In the Gemara, if the Soiv's man Amirayim was speaking of Talmud Babli, if the Gemara says halacha like this halacha, then we have to follow that. No one has the koyach to go opposite of what Chazal, which includes the Tanaim and the Amirayim, but not later. But in the Mishnah, it's interesting here also, even though the Mishnah says, which means Rabbeinu HaKadosh says, we don't paskin like Rabbi Shua ben Beseira. Well, we paskin like Rabbi Akiva, which will be a Mishnah Zayin a little bit later in the Amud. But before we come to Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara is going to go give you sources and further clarifications in this Mishnah. Let's begin with the first. The first was Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer held that it has to be at least the size of Beis Roiva. So says the Gemara, my Tama in Yerushalmi means what's the source? So the Gemara says it's Gzeira Shava. And by the way, according to the Achroinim that hold that it's only Midrabanan, doesn't matter that the Gemara brings a Gzeira Shava. We call that an Asmachta. The Shas is filled with the sources, and then we actually know that it's only an Asmachta. The way the Rambam words it, such good oisias, that the Oibishter, think about it, when Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai, what did Moshe Rabbeinu give us? Do you know that he only completed the writing of the Torah the last day of his life? We didn't get the Torah Shebachsav the way we have it, the Chamisha Chumshatir. We got that on Vav Adar. Maybe even on Zayin Adar. That's the machlokas between Rashi Tosfos, like Moshe Rabbeinu passed away on Shabbos. L'kula Alma Moshe Rabbeinu passed away on Shabbos. If Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the Sifrei Torah on the day that he passed away, that's the whole shaila. You're not allowed to write on Shabbos. So one approach was that it's called Bahashvas Kulmas. Al Pi Kabbalah, you say one of the Oivishter's holy Shemos, and the pen writes on its own, and that's mutter on Shabbos. Or he wrote it on Friday. what Torah did we get? The Torah is Torah Shabbat Peh. It means Moshe Rabbeinu came down and he taught us the whole Taryag mitzvahs, the way we keep it, the way Yidden keep it. Then he gave us the written Torah slowly. When Yidden got it, the Rambam writes, what were we doing in the midbar? We were trying to see Maha Kesher between what the Oibishter told us to do and the words in the written Torah. And that is really what Gemara is. Gemara is here to make a link between what we practice and what's written. So that will be a good example. And that can even go on the Rabbanans. Yidden always have to find a source in the Torah. So what's the source? Nemar kan sotcha. Sotcha here we're talking Pashas Kedoshim, right? Loisechala pa'as sotcha. And it says by Kalayim the word sotcha. What's the pasuk by Kalayim? Vishte by Kalayim. Sotcha loisizra Kalayim. By the way, they're both in Pashas Kedoshim. So what do we learn? Sotcha sotcha. Ma sotcha shenam lahalon beis roiva. What's the beis roiva by Kalayim? Chavra, take a quick look in the Rashi Dilio. 8 lines from the top on the right column. 8 lines from the top on the right column. What's the base Rebbe by Kalam? He says Gavaldi. The Tanan, we're going to learn Bepere Kol Sa'ah. We're going to learn this in Yerushalmi together. That what? Tfua base Reva. Tfua b'tuah Reva means if I have one field, if I have one field and I want to plant in that field 2 different tfuas, let's say barley and wheat, do you know what I need to do? I have to leave the space of a base Reva in between to be mafsik between one and the other. Why do I have to leave a field of base Reva? Alma, Taichas, what's the pshat? The butts in Mishir base Reva, Leichashiv Sada Ba'anpe Nafshe. In other words, I need to have a field by itself to separate the 2 grains. That's again halach azoy Moshe Messinai. In other words, that is not written in the Torah, but that's a rule we know by Kalayim. So Satcha, the concept that a base roiva is of significance as a sadeh, we learn from Kalayim. Beautiful. Afkan base roiva. Now let's move on to the next sheet. Right? Matama the Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua says, "Bo'oise sosayim." He also says, "Gavaldik." I'll tell you, Nemar kan satcha, as we said. Loisechala pa'as satcha litzor pashas kedoshim. V'nemala halon pashas kiseitzei. Now, we did not yet speak a lot about shikrecha, but as we know, one of the rules that if I forget a bundle when I'm picking up the bundles that were already harvested, I have to leave it there. But there is a size of the bundle. If the bundle is bigger than a certain size, one bundle, I can pick it back up. It's too big. The Eibishter was not speaking about leaving something that's that big. What's the size? And ma sada shenema lahalon by shikha. It's now we're going to have the girsa gidon sosayim. What's pshat sosayim? Again, you can go inside the Rashirilio 10 lines from the bottom. It's like in the middle of the right column. Come on, we're going to have the dini shikha imesach l'speya. That oimesh sheyesh by sosayim. If one bundle, the bundle itself contains 2 soft produce. Guys, 1 saw is 144 eggs. We already said, let's go that every egg, we're talking about an average, a medium, baininist chicken egg. It's 50 grams. 144 times 2 is 288. Okay, 288 times 50 grams is be'erech 31 pounds, just to know. Because if the bundle is more than 31 pounds, even though you forgot it, you are allowed to pick it up. So we have this halacha. Now, where do we get the base osayim? But we're making this comparison. So just like over there, we have a din that if it's that big, it's chashuv. Afkan osayim. Now let's go to the next sheet. My tamad Rav Tarfon 6 by 6 tvachim. So he goes to another din. Shisha me aruga. What shisha aruga? So let's go weiter in the Rashi Elio. 8 lines from the bottom of the right column. Tetran b'mesachtes kalayim. Aruga means a vegetable patch or a garden patch. This is going to be a Gavaldik Adin. Every year when we learn this in the Rambam, we say, wow, you have to have a picture, but let me just share the concept that on one hand, we are not allowed to plant 2 seeds together. On the other hand, this Gavaldik leniency by Kalayim, that if there is not Marasayin, even though they're mamish close, Lakula, if it doesn't look like you planted it together, Why would that be? Because every row is going in a different direction. So if you have a patch, a vegetable patch, so on the parameters, you can plant one row like this, one row like this, one row like this, one row like that. Imagine a person looks at it, he sees each one is in a different direction. That even though the ends touch, not intermingled, but they go, it's okay. And then in the middle, if you have 6 tvachim and you put something, a punkt in the middle, so you can plant 5 seeds in an aruga of 6 by 6 tvachim. That's what the Rashi Elio is reminding us. And he says that it's Gavaldic words.
We don't care about the roots when they're so close.
No. That's the whole. We're going to get to by Kalayim. Normally, the rule is Kevan. Don't do what God says. And on top of that, if it looks like you're doing what Hashem said not to do it, don't even do that. That's normally Marasai. By Kalayim, Midoy Raisa, if it doesn't look like you planted them together, even if there is a certain mixing, not when it comes to a vineyard, Kevin, only when it comes to seeds. We're going to learn many, many details. You're allowed to do it. Now, it's called a veggie patch, a garden patch. A garden patch is called steyerek, garden patch. Steyerek, since you have this halacha that you are allowed to plant, as long as it has 6 by 6 tvachim, you can plant 5 zeiroinim, a row on each side, and a psanukud in the middle. From there, we learned that the word steyerek means 6 by 6 tvachim. Hashem said by Peah, when you harvest your sadeh, leave Peah. So since by steyerek, stam steyerek is 6 by 6 tvachim, I'll give you a nafkamina. If I sell you chevra steyerek, and I did not specify how big or little of land I'm selling you, stam steyerek is 6 by 6 tvachim. You get it? So if steyerek is 6 by 6, so then we can say that sadeh by Peah is 6 by 6 tvachim, which is even more chamur. But it has to be 6 by 6. And in our Mishnah, the 4th shita, Rabbi Shimon Levi Omer, kedei liksar v'lishnois, for you to be able to reap twice. And the Mishnah says, now the Gemara is asking, Ma ketzira, when Rabbi Shimon Meseda says that in order for you to reap twice, there are 2 ways of understanding it. The way we learned it when we said the Mishnah, which is Kederach HaKoitzim. Kederach HaKoitzim means when you harvest, you fill your fist with a bundle. That means 2 fistfuls, one to harvest, one to leave. Or maybe, afilu koshu. Afilu koshu means even if you only have 2 stalks, you can cut 1 stalk with a sickle. Maybe Rabbi Shua ben Levi is saying land that's big enough for 2 stalks to grow, for you to cut one and for you to leave the other. So the Gemara says, so which one is it? Min ma dechsev. We're going to understand based on a pasuk in Tehillim. Vishteit in Tehillim, David HaMelech is cursing the wicked, that the wicked should wither like plants that never make it for the harvest. They wither before the harvest. Shaloi, it says, it's not va'asher loi. In Tehillim, it says, Shaloi milei kapei koitzet, that these Rishonim should be like produce with which the harvester cannot fill his palm, implying that the harvester normally will fill his palm, or they should wither early. That v'chitznoi ma'amer, people that are binding, and normally they bind enough to fit in their apron, it should not even reach that size. But the fact that the Torah uses the expression "shaloi milei kapoi koitzer," kapoi is your fist. So therefore, Rabbi Shua ben Beseda shita is enough land for it to grow 2 fistfuls of produce.
Not very interesting to go back 2 lines. It's not like in Bavli that the Gemara is asking what is Rabbi Shia doing with the pasuk of Rabtav, what's Rabtav doing with the pasuk of.
Especially, and first of all, a great point. Especially, again, many learn that all of this is just an asmach. Then you don't even have to explain it. Normally, we say "Ein Adam Dan Gzei Shava Elam Kain." Here at Mirabai. So, by the way, that would fit. Let's go to Doiraisa. So everyone learns Satcha Satcha. The question is Satcha Satcha from where? No, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu Sada Sada. So either you learn it from Kalayim, right, or you learn it from Shikha, or you learn it from Steyerek. And Abishua ben Beseda doesn't have the Gzeira Shava. That's the Pshat Shleimer. But he says logically, again, you're only chayiv when you begin to harvest. Then you have to leave. So you have to have two, one to harvest and one to leave. And all of that will be a kasha on Rabbi Akiva. What does Rabbi Akiva say? Let's go right into Mishnah Zayin. Rabbi Akiva, Aymed, a karka kolshu. Guys, karka kolshu, how much can grow from karka kolshu? One stalk. The Gemara is going to ask, so how does it work? If I have karka kolshu means a millimeter. Max can grow one stalk. How do you leave payah from one stalk? Again, you're not chayiv until you begin harvesting. Once you harvested, you have nothing to leave. The Gemara is going to address that. But he says, no, karka kolshu, karka is with payah. And now it's going to get gewalt. Now, guys, we're making a chazara in many halachas and Torah Shabbat Peh. I would like to suggest, let's make today a Rash Shadilio day. Put your finger, find already the Rash Shadilio. The next case is Bikurim. Bikurim is 4 lines before the bottom of the right column because we're going to go in every single one. We'll read the Rash Shadilio. We have time. Let's go quick. So like this. Payah we get, right? You have Karka Kolshu, you chayiv and Payah. How is it shaykh? The Gemara is going to ask. Bikurim. What's the din of Bikurim? Says the Rash Shadilio. We're speaking, Bikurim is from the Shivas Haminim. We're not talking about the fruits. Cut that out. We're only speaking about the grains. Chita and So'ir. Chita doesn't mean only Chita, Danny. It means Chita and So'ir. Like it. By an Elon, if you do not own 16 ames, be'igol mikol tzad, if you don't own that, you cannot bring Bikurim. You know why? I'll tell you why. Who said about nourishment, Kevin? If I have a tree and I don't own 16 ames, my tree is growing, is getting nourishment from 16 amas minimum. And if I don't own it, that means I'm a gazlan. I'm getting nourishment from someone. If it doesn't grow beheta, you don't do bikurim. Hold on by a chito. So what are we saying over here? Karka kolshu. That's what we're saying. That if you even only own karka kolshu, from which a chita grows, you bring bikurim. Why gazlan? Because every chita needs really 3 tvachim. So it should be 3 tvachim. So it says that Ashadilim, going to the left column, that ikir yinikasa einoi elikanegdim. You have to know the mitzias of the Torah is telling you how it works. When you plant something, it gets secondary nourishment from 3 tvachim. The ikid is from directly underneath it. And that's the whole pshat. It's enough for you not to be called a gazlan. And really, he says, by Elon, really, you need to have 25 ounces. Really. 16 ounces is because the ikid is from the 16 ounces. But coming back over here, bikurim means, now you get it, that if I own karka kol shehu, and I have one chita kriching out, I got to bring bikurim. There's a chiddush in that. It's yoinik, but the ikid is from what's underneath it. I own it. Next case, the licht of Olav Prusbel. So you have to remember like this, that, and it reminds us, we have a cloud, we're going to learn it in the Yerushalmi, and Shvius, I think in Bavli was given Daf Lamed Vav. This we learned with you in the Yeshiva Shemasechtes, that ein koisem Prusbel ela ala karka. Guys, I'm the loiva. In the good old days, people would not lend me money unless I own land. People did not lend without collateral. Real collateral is land. And when it comes to what was Prusbel, so the Torah says that you have to lend money, even though midoraisa, a loan that's not paid, when the Shemitah year comes, machlokes, the beginning of the year, the end of the year, it's mashmid the loan. The Torah says that don't have in your heart belial not to lend money. Lend the money. Hillel Hazakim saw people are not lending money. So he made a document called the Pruz Buli Bute, a takana for the wealthy and the poor, which will allow people to lend money. But really, the loan is given over to a Beis Din, so the Beis Din does the collection, even though Beis Din appoints you to do the collection for them, for your money. So it says, the Gemara says, how can you undo the Din Torah? The Gemara in Bavli says, because really, Shemitah, Hashmatas, Ksafim, Bisman Hazeh is only the Rabbanon. There's another rule, that Chachamim only made a takana for Musa the Shchicha. For something that's not common, they never made a takana. Getting money, if you don't own land, is something that's not common. They never made a takana. If you own land, you can write a prusbel. How much land do you have to own? Even karka kol shehu. Next then, the liknisim and the chasam she'en lemachrayis. So we have a kinyanim, right? Mesechtes kedushin. How do you make a kinyan on karka chevra? But you do it by kesef, shtar, and chazak. By metaltlin, how do you make a kinyan mishicha? Mishicha. What happens if I own land and I own metaltalin? The Mishnah doesn't go, do the metaltalin have to be on the land? Can it be away from the land? Then again, not the details, the concept. If I sell you land and with the land, I sell you metaltalin, or if I gift matana, if the kinyan is done for the land and it was clear you are also buying the metaltalin, receiving the metaltalin, agav karka, you only make a kinyan, says the Mishnah of Kesef Shtar and Chazak. You don't make a kinyan Meshicha, and you acquire the metaltalin. How much land do you have to own in order to affect a kinyan agav? Karka kolshu. Another din of karka kolshu. Chevra, let's move on. Daf Lamed Aleph Amid Beis. Let's go to a next example. Now, a few words of introduction. The so geschmack to chazal all these dinim. Shchiv Mera, a person who is laying because he's very ill, and that person is getting ready to pass away. The person who makes a oral statement of what he would like to happen to his property, the Chachamim said that even though normally you have to have a kinyan, if you don't have a kinyan, then your words, that's what you want, but it's not effective. You cannot enforce it in a base. But if a Shchiv Mera would know that from the anxiety of, oh my God, I'm already dying and they won't even do what I'm doing, what I want, he might pass away. So they were very lenient and they said two dinim. Number one, that the words of a Shchiv Mera, right, is as if it was documented and made a kinyan. On the other hand, if I make a kinyan and I want to retract too late, if I give you a gift and I made a kinyan and I want to retract, I cannot retract. But the matnas Shchiv Mera only goes into effect upon death. And if the person did not die, none of what he said goes into effect. Now, there's a rule. HaKoisev nechasav Shchiv Mera. I want you to know that we learned this so much in the Bavli. HaKoisev doesn't only mean HaKoisev. HaKoisev can also mean oral. It can also mean HaKoisev. Don't get stuck with the word HaKoisev. However, he's writing over or orally giving over everything, but he's retaining for himself a sheer karka kolshu. He left for himself karka kolshu. If this person is giving the gift because he's going to die, that's the way God made it. The only thing we take with us is toira masam toivim. You don't take karka with you. You don't take nothing with you. So the very fact that he retained karka kolshu, that is megala, that makes it clear that what he did right was not as a matnas Shchiv Mera. And therefore, let me just finish. If no kinyan was made, then nothing. If a kinyan was made, like HaKoisev, that's why HaKoisev, even though he dies, it still goes into effect because it's not in the category of matnas Shchiv Mera. And then we learned in the Bavli another nuance. That he did not explicitly state, I'm doing it because I'm dying. If a person, if he was Megal, if he says, I am giving, or I'm writing, all of my properties aside of Kolshu, because I'm dying, if he said that, then it will have the koyach of a matnas Shchiv Mera. This is only because he didn't specify in what category is this matana, so we presume. So there's no presumption if you're share karka kolshu. Yeah, Kevin, what do you ask?
All right, if he says I'm keeping it for myself, doesn't that mean he's keeping it for his kids?
Yes. But so if he doesn't,
so Kevin, doesn't that mean that
if he doesn't say that, we learned this. I'm sure we have to find the daf and the Bavli, and you're going to hear Kevin asking the same question. I can promise you. The brain thinks the same way. You'll find it's going to be funny. In other words, just all these nuances are not the nakud of our Mishnah is that the din that if you retain, that reveals that it's not in the category of Shchiv Mera. It's not that if you retain something chashuv, even a kolshu. By the way, here in LA, you know what a karka kolshu costs? You have no idea. So you see that the ain't davar soif. Okay, so that's the next. Let's read it. Shir karka kolshu. Then matnase kayemis means that even if the person, let's say, recovered, even though he recovered, if it would be a matnas Shchiv Mera, if you recover, it's undone. Now it won that. Now the Mishnah has to write HaKoisev, because if there wasn't HaKoisev, if it's not matnas Shchiv Mera, you need a kinyan. So that's why the kinyan shtab. That's just why the Mishnah said HaKoisev. However, lo yishir karka kolshu, then ein matnase kayemis. In other words, he only gave it because he's dying. And if he doesn't die, then none of what he said goes into effect, like the halach of all of the matnas Shchiv Mera. Our next case in the Mishnah, when a person is married, from when they make a kinyan for the ksuba, everything they own is linked to the ksuba. Now I want to add another detail that's very important. We spoke this out, that only the Ga'oina made a takana that a woman could collect her ksuba from metaltalin. That's something new after the times of Chazal. Bizmana Chazal, of course, if the husband, let's say he passed away, if he has in his possession, if he has metaltalin, she could collect it from there. But if he doesn't have anything, so then you even get it from the land that he sold after he made the kinyan of ksuba, but only from land. So like this. Therefore, if a husband sells land, he retains land. The lien is on the land that he kept. If a husband gave away or sold all of his property, then really, he can do that. But if there's going to be a chiyuv of the ksuba, like he passed away, she'll collect it from the lokuchais because it was encumbered to her lien. There is a concept that a woman can forgive a lien of the ksuba. When do we say that she forgave the lien of the ksuba? That if a man, when he's alive, a husband, is writing hakoisev nechasav labanav. This is not Yerusha, guys, because Yerusha, you don't write anything. He's writing it labanav as a gift. He's making a document. Again, doesn't have to be a document. The Gemara is going to elaborate. There's a lot on this. But let's go with the words of the Mishnah. A man is writing a gift document. And in the document, instead of writing all of his karka to his children, in the document, in the document, he says, and my wife will get a karka kolshu. She was mekabelet. She didn't protest against it. So the Chachamim, the Tanakama understands that her lack of protesting to this gift, like, why do you have to write a gift? That is because he's really asking of her that she should forgive the lien on the property, and to give her something, he gave her karka kol. Now, if the karka kolshu has the value of the ksuba, pshita, the chiddush is that even though the karka kolshu is not in the equal value of the ksuba, we understand that her lack of protesting for that document indicates that she forgave the lien on the karka. And therefore, if he passes away and there was nothing for her to collect, she has to go to the karka. She can't collect it from the sons. If the ksuvasam.
Doesn't she need to write a document that I agree to this?
No, she doesn't. No, she doesn't. And that's the whole sugya. We're going to get to, and then sometimes we say that nachas ruach asisa labayli. We don't say it over here. Now, another detail that everyone says, guys, we learned this in the Bible, that since the Ga'oina made a takana, that a woman could keep for herself, can also collect from the taltalin of her deceased husband. That's a takana Ga'oina. If the husband left for himself metaltalin, we cannot say this halacha, which means that if he dies and the metaltalin that he left is not enough for her ksuba, she'll take that metaltalin and she'll take the karka from the sons. In other words, you know why she didn't protest? Because she thought now that she's covered with the metaltalin. In the times of the Tanaim and Amoraim, she never collected it from metaltalin. So we don't mention metaltalin. It's about, so if he wrote away all the karka, she was never moichel. First of all, she's not involved in the document. She doesn't even have to protest. So what? The same karka is linked to her. But again, if he wrote for her karka koshu, so she was moichel the lien on the rest of the karka. Rabbi Yossi Omer, the same idea, not only by kasa, which is shitas Tanakama, but even if he didn't write anything, so how would he give it away? We just learned in the Mishnah. But the same idea. The guy, Mishchiv Mira, is saying he wants all of his properties to be gifted to his children, and one little thing to his wife. Same idea, but not even kasav. Also, the same concept. And Mashenk in the Tanakama holds that she only forfeits her lien, right, if it was written in a will. But the commonality between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi is chevre, that if sheer karka also means karka kol shehu. That means what we're learning right now. Rabbi Akiva, we're speaking about peah. Rabbi Akiva is choylek on all the four tanoim. He says peah yechayv even on karka kol shehu. Now the Mishnah put together many other halachas where karka kol shehu will be of significance, of halachic significance. But before we go on to braisas that add even more halachas, the Gemara wants to understand Shitas Rabbi Akiva, which doesn't fit, like we said. The trigger is only harvesting. If you don't harvest, you're not chayiv. Karka kolshu can grow one chita. How is it shaykh to leave peah? If you didn't harvest it, you're not chayiv. You're not chayiv. If you left it, you didn't do a mitzvah. There's no chiyuv yet. And if you harvest it, there's nothing left. That's the kasha. Rabbi Kiva oimer karka kol shu frek digamara Rav imi shem mishum elakish boyi haga atzmacha. Think about this. Harave with yourself. What do you mean one piece? One little kosher means there's even only one ear. And you know something? If you fulfill an obligation prior to you having the obligation, you did not fulfill it. Very nice. You gave tzedakah. You did not give payah. What triggers the obligation? The beginning of the harvest. Misha Katza. If there's only one stalk to begin with, once you caught it, there's nothing to leave. That's why the last sheet in the Mishnah, Rabbi Shua ben Beseda, made so much sense. Answers the Gemara. Rab Chananya, b'shem Rab Pinchas, Zoktet Tifted. This is the solution. What's the solution? You're right. Karka kolshu. What grows on karka kolshu? Only one kelach, only one stalk. But do you know? See, maybe the other. That on one stalk, you can have from one stalk many little ears. Many ears from one stalk. So you went ahead and you cut one ear from the one stalk. That is the beginning of harvest. Harvest doesn't mean cutting the stalk from the ground. You harvested epis. You can have more on that same stalk that's still connected to the ground. Uboy chamesh shebalim. Why he writes chamesh shebalim? Pick Kabbalah chevron. These are the hey chasadim, the hey gevuras. I don't know. It doesn't have to be the hey shebalim. I don't know why he said that al pinigla. But let's go right now. Says the Gemara Rav Mana boy. The whole thing began with karka kolshu. Do you remember? We just learned what did we just have before? What happens if I sell you all my trees? You remember that? I sold you all my trees. Right? Rabbi Yehuda was only Amosine, even the Tanakama. So the Mishnah means Lakula Alma. If I sell you all my trees, you don't own a granule of land. The buyer is chayiv not only to leave payah. Every tree has to have its own payah. What does that prove? You don't need to own land to be obligated in the mitzvah of payah. So why are we speaking about karka? Really, the question should be, how much grain do you own? That's a bomba kasha. Rav Mana boye velitnan omrin koma koshi chevus vepeya. The Braisa really should have been speaking about how much standing grain yachiv payas bekoma, not karka. It's not shayich the karka. So explains the second Lishna Achrina, the Marafulda. The Marafulda in middle of the Amid, 11 lines from the bottom, the Lishna Achrina, Mastis and Kashile, Lama Tony Karaka, Habale Lemisne Koma, the Hall, the Inyan Peya, says the Marafulda, Filo, Ain like Karaka, you're chayiv. To which the Gemara answers, we can read the answer on the Marafulda, you're right. Called the Mishnah is being symmetrical. Umeshana, since the next case in the Mishnah is Bikurim, by Bikurim, you have to own land. And all the other dinim in the Mishnah is about land. So we threw in their payah also. That's how the way he teaches. Let's read inside the Gemara. Ella begin the Tana Bikurim. And by Bikurim, it's really connected to land. So we also wrote Karka, but really, the everything fits. The four opinions of the Mishnah Vav and the fifth sheet of Rabbi Akiva Halacha Kemoisoi. All fits. It doesn't have to be about karka. Now the Gemara adds, I want you to know, we learned the Mishnah. Let's go to the Braisa. In the Braisa, we have more cases. What will be another case where you have to have karka? Yet, even only karka kolshu meets the requirement of land, says the Braisa, the mitzvah of seeing and being seen. Seeing godliness and being seen by the Oibishter 3 times a year. We know that it's only on a male, that we know. Right, it's a mitzvah say shazman gerama. We learned this, right? Elam shir, you can show up once, even though the Mishnah is really speaking about the karbanos. But let's speak about not the karbanos, the mitzvah of re'iyah. You should know that who is obligated to go and appear in the Beis Hamikdash only if you own land. Zoi. Now, how much land do you have to own? Kolshu. And indeed, Rabbi Yosef, B'Shem Rabbi Yechanan, Misha ain't like karka, part of min. Now, what will be the source? We're going to have in the Gemara soon. But before we go into the source, continues the Gemara, Rav Mana boyi. That why didn't we mention Another case. Now, this kasha is not on the Mishnah. By the Mishnah, we say Tana v'shir. And actually, I'll tell you even more, even by a Tana, if the Mishnah counts many, and they only leave one, it's a kasha. Why only leave one? In the Bavli, the approach is that you know why the Mishnah left one case? Because it's really two cases. Once it's more than one case, that's the way the Bavli learns many times. If only one case, so really, there's different ways of learning this Gemara. You can say that the Gemara is trying now to answer Akasha since Rei Oyon also is included in the mitzvah of Karka Kol Shehu. Why didn't the Mishnah mention it? The answer will be because there's another thing, Vidui Maisid, as we'll speak out in a moment. But it's not formulated that way in the Yerushalmi. Here, it sounds like the Gemara is asking on the Braisa. The Braisa is trying to complement the Mishnah. The Mishnah left Rei Oyon. So if you are complementing the Mishnah, why didn't you count? That's the Gemara's kasha. Why did the Braisa not say Misha ein lekarka potem min avidui? The Gabbai is tired. The Gabbai should have been here. The Gabbai is by mitzvah parshas Kisavai, and in the beginning of Kisavai, after Bikurim, the Torah speaks about the mitzvah called Vidui Maisves. Vidui normally means to confess for sins. Actually, in the Torah, Vidui means to confess how great I am. It means after there's the separating of Trumas and Maisves. Before that, my produce is tevel. But you guys, if I separated my truma, even though I did not give it yet to a kohen, I can eat the produce, truma and my serisha, my sesheni, but I can't keep it in my house forever. So the Eivishter says that twice during the 7 cycle, which is Pesach time, Erev Pesach, Shvi Shal Pesach, there's a machlokas about that. Pesach time of the 4th year, Pesach time on the 7th year. What's the magic of those times? Because the 7th Shemitah cycle is really 2 sub-cycles. Because Truma, you always have to give. Ma'aser Rishon, you always have to give. But Ma'aser Sheni versus Ma'aser Ani, so 1st, 2nd, Ma'aser Sheni, 3rd, Ma'aser Ani. 4th, 5th, Ma'aser Sheni. 6th, Ma'aser Ani. So it's like too many cycles. So Pesach, after every mini cycle, the Eibishter didn't, you already separated, that's not you go hungry. But you didn't give it. So this biur maisres means get it out of your house, give it to the recipients. After you give it to the recipients, whether you gave it right away or whether you gave it the last second, Pesach time the 4th, Pesach time on the 7th year, there's a whole vidui of how that I fulfilled your mitzvahs. I fulfilled giving all the maisres, and then I asked so there's a rule that who is able to say vidui maisres? Only if you own land. Where do we know that? Because it says how much land do you have to own? Only kolshu. And this is being formulated by Rav Mana as a question. You, Braisa, you're complimenting the Mishnah. Why didn't you compliment it all the way? Why did you not mention Vidui Maisres? Says the Gemara doesn't have an answer. The Gemara just wants to give a backup to this din. It's true that what? That Rabbi Yosef, B'Shem Rabbi Bun, in the name of Rabbi Yechanan Amar, that Shmuas, okay, and I also heard this. That what? Misha ein lekarka potem min avidui. And what's the source? The same source. Let's begin, guys. There's a lot of Agadah tomorrow. We have another minute, just even for 1 minute. So the Gemara. So let's go back to the Oyim. What's the source? We never gave a source for the Oyim. We gave a source for Vidui Ma'aser. So Rabbi Yossi, B'Shem Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Indeed, also like we learned, Misha ein lekarka potem min avidui. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean you don't get a mitzvah. It just means you are exempt. You're not mechuyev to go. Shenemar, and a pasuk in Kisiso. The pasuk says that's one of the sources that played him in Hashemayim. Not that we need a source for people that like to have a source. One of the sources is that Hashem says that whenever Yidden are going to go up Aliyas L'Regel, you know how properties were marked then by a fence. Today you have laser. Today, if God forbid your neighbor is going to take the fence between you and him, and he's going to make his property bigger, you can prove it in the city. It didn't work that way. So a person could have a fear. All of the men are going Aliyas L'Regel. A person, God forbid, who's dishonest, they're gonna make their land bigger on the cheshbon of your becoming smaller. Hashem promised it's never gonna happen. Only the Eibishter can make such a promise. What does it say? It says in Parshas Ki Sisa, "V'lo yachmoid ish es artzecha ba'aloischa leirois es pnei Hashem lekecha Sholish Pa'am Mashon. Oh, so the fact that it says that Lo Yachmod Ishes Artzecha Yechap, that means that the whole mitzvah, that's the way we're learning. The whole mitzvah of your chayiv leirayos, if you have artzecha, and on that we are saying how much artzecha, even kol shuhu. That's the source. We'll stop over here. God willing to be continued. Mit meises. I got it till tomorrow.